Welcome to Short Movie Channel. The movie starts with a girl named Maddie getting out of a taxi. She stands in place and sees Paul, the famous writer, who has just arrived to attend a party celebrating his new book becoming the highest-grossing release in history. Paul waves at Maddie to come over and join him at the party. But Maddie's luck seems awful, because just then, the taxi door slams shut on the scarf she's wearing. She quickly pulls it off before the taxi drives away, and she falls to the ground. After getting up, she heads over to Paul. A bunch of reporters gather around Paul, asking him the secret behind his success. He tells them his success is thanks to his incredibly talented assistant, and then grabs Maddie's hand and makes her stand beside him in front of the press. But he tells everyone that he's the one who wrote the book and that Maddie only helped him. In truth, Maddie is the actual author of the book. One of the reporters asks Paul if there's a woman in his life who inspired his romantic novel. Paul looks at Maddie and answers vaguely, saying he doesn't like to reveal his personal secrets. Maddie feels overjoyed because she secretly loves Paul but has never been able to tell him how she feels. Later, Maddie meets up with her friends Emma and Heather. It's clear Maddie hasn't told them she has feelings for Paul. Heather doesn't seem happy about what's going on because she knows Maddie is the one who wrote the whole book. Heather says Maddie's name should be on the cover right next to Paul's. Maddie replies that Paul is a big-time, talented author and that she's happy just helping him with his work. Later on, Maddie goes to Paul to finally tell him how she feels about him, but she's shocked when he tells her she's beautiful, and that the two of them make a great team. Then he says it's time to tell her something he's been hiding, because their relationship needs to go to the next level. Maddie lights up with happiness and tells him she feels the same way. But it turns out Paul just wants her to start working on the next book. He says he won't give her the plot this time, she'll get to write it all herself. Maddie is disappointed because she thought he was finally going to confess he loved her. Paul gets up to meet his fans and, by coincidence, runs into Heather and Emma. It turns out he doesn't know them and this is the first time he's meeting them. Emma is having trouble with her fake eyelashes, and Paul offers to help her fix them. While he's doing that, Maddie watches from a distance, feeling very jealous. She walks up to Paul and tells him his fans are waiting. Paul goes to sit in front of the audience and reads a part of his book. Later, he sits down with Maddie and her friends. Maddie is surprised when he gives Emma a signed copy of the book, making Emma really happy. She asks Paul about the lake pictured on the book's cover, saying it looks beautiful and romantic. Paul tells her the lake is near his family home in Ireland. Emma says she hopes she can visit that lake one day. Maddie gets annoyed and tells Paul he has work in the morning and should go to bed early. Later, Maddie, Emma, and Heather are in a taxi heading back to their apartment. Emma is super excited and says this is the happiest night of her life. Heather teases her, saying it was pretty obvious she and Paul were really hitting it off. Maddie cuts in, telling them Paul is a famous person and has to treat his fans well. Emma tells them that Paul gave her a signed copy of the book. Maddie says that's normal and he does that with all his fans. But then Emma shows her the book and says it's not normal that he wrote his phone number next to the signature. Maddie gets upset and says it's just a phone number, not a marriage proposal, and insists nothing will happen between them. 3 months later, Maddie and Heather are at the airport, heading to Emma and Paul's wedding, which will take place in Ireland. Heather is excited and can't believe Emma and Paul are getting married. After a while, they arrive in Ireland. Maddie goes to get her luggage, and there's a photographer named James also waiting for his bag. Maddie and James both reach for the same suitcase at the same time. James tells her it's his, but Maddie insists it's hers. They tug at the bag until it bursts open, and the clothes spill out everywhere. Maddie picks up some of the clothes to show him they're hers, but realizes she's holding James's shorts instead. She gets embarrassed and apologizes, explaining that their bags look exactly alike. James picks up his stuff and walks off. Maddie leaves the airport and gets on a bus to go to Paul's family house. Coincidentally, James is on the same bus. He asks her about her bag, and she says the airport staff are looking for it and will call her when they find it. Maddy learns James is a nature photographer. James sees Maddy holding Paul's book and says he knows Paul but doesn't like reading his work. He's surprised when Maddy gets off at Paul's house and tells him she helps Paul write his books. James teases her and says he feels sorry for her. Maddy is about to respond, but the bus drives away before she can. After that, Maddy enters the scene and becomes part of Paul's family. Paul starts to feel overwhelmed, so he takes Corey with him to introduce her to the family. Paul's mom starts talking to Emma about the beauty and value of the antiques in the house, saying they're all historical pieces that are priceless. Unfortunately, as soon as Maddy walks in, she accidentally bumps into a vase. It almost crashes to the ground, but she catches it at the last second. Then Maddy greets Paul's parents, and they all sit down together. Paul's mom keeps talking about how she's personally taking care of every single detail of the wedding, even down to the pins the bridesmaids will wear. She's the one who bought them because she wants everything to be perfect. Maddy feels awkward and upset when she sees photos of Paul and Emma still around the room. Later, Paul takes everyone out to a scenic spot to enjoy the beauty of nature. They're all surprised when they realize they've arrived at the lake that's pictured on the cover of Paul's book. Maddy is thrilled. She always wanted to see that lake in real life. There are only 2 boats at the lake. Paul and Emma get into one boat, while Corey and Hazar get into the other. Maddy feels left out and sad that she's alone, but she hides her feelings and tells them she'll just walk around and wait. While walking, Maddy is mesmerized by the trees and flowers all around her. Suddenly, she sees a beautiful tree with a stone bench underneath it. She sits on the bench and wishes she were the one marrying Paul. Just then, a mysterious woman appears behind her. Maddy is surprised and asks the woman who she is. The woman says she's a saint, responsible for granting wishes to anyone who visits that place. She tells Maddy the bench is actually called the wishing seat. She then tells Maddy she can grant her wish if it's what she really wants. Excited, Maddy sits down again, closes her eyes, and wishes to be the one marrying Paul. Suddenly, she wakes up in bed and realizes it was just a strange dream. But then she hears Paul's voice coming from the bathroom. He asks her to hand him a towel. She gives it to him and quickly leaves the room, only to bump into Emma in the hallway. Emma asks about Paul, and Maddy nervously says she hasn't seen him since yesterday. She's embarrassed when Paul walks out of the room and Emma sees him. Emma is shocked when Paul tries to kiss her, and she pulls away. Paul is confused and says this isn't the first time he's kissed her in front of Emma. Maddy is overwhelmed and can't make sense of what's going on. When Hazar arrives, Maddy pulls her into the room and says she needs to talk to her about something, but only if she promises not to tell Emma. Maddy explains the strange dream she had about the saint and the wishing bench. She says she wished to marry Paul. Hazar is surprised and tells her it's probably just wedding stress. But Maddy starts to realize the wish actually came true, especially when she sees a wedding ring on her finger. She's beyond excited. Later, Maddy joins the family for breakfast, and Paul tells her he wants to take her on a bike ride around the property. During the ride, Maddy struggles to control the bike and falls. Paul rushes over to check on her. Hazar and Emma are nearby and see everything. Luckily, Maddy isn't hurt. Back at the house, they tell Maddy to get ready to try on the wedding dress. They go to the tailor, and Maddy's friends are shocked by how the dress looks. Paul's mom explains that the dress is a family heirloom. Her grandmother wore it, then her mother, and finally she wore it on her own wedding day. Meanwhile, James is at the bookstore. He ends up being the 100th customer of the week and gets a free book as a gift. It turns out the book is Paul's. James wants to decline, but the seller insists. So James accepts the book and leaves. Back with Maddy, her friends ask how she could agree to wear such a dress. Maddy tells them she's willing to do anything for Paul. Suddenly, she sees the saint outside the shop. She runs after her but ends up crashing into James' car, which happens to be parked nearby. She apologizes and asks him what brought him there. James is confused because Maddy talks to him like they already know each other. He's even more puzzled when she sees Paul's book in his hand and asks when he started reading it. James, in turn, asks who she is. Maddy begins to suspect she's in a different timeline, and that James doesn't remember meeting her before. While they're talking, Paul's mom shows up and asks Maddy why she ran out of the store. Maddy says James is her friend and a photographer, and that she ran after him to ask if he could shoot the wedding. Paul's mom is thrilled and asks James to be the wedding photographer. James refuses, saying he doesn't photograph people. Paul's mom is stunned. She's not used to people turning her down. So she offers to pay him 3 times his usual rate. James quickly agrees and asks when the wedding is. Paul's mom takes him to the house to show him where he'll be photographing the bride and groom on their big day. When Paul finds out James is a photographer, he suggests they do a photo shoot of him and Maddy in a beautiful outdoor spot. He wants to use one of the photos as the cover for his new book. At night, Maddy is asleep when she suddenly feels someone touching her. She quickly gets up and hits them, only to realize it's Paul. She apologizes and tells him she's still not used to having someone sleep next to her. The next day, Maddy meets James to go visit the locations where he's shooting nature scenes. James asks her about Paul, and she tells him Paul is tired and won't be able to join them. While they're on the road, Maddy and James start talking and are surprised to discover how much they have in common. When they reach the mountain, James secretly snaps a beautiful picture of Maddy while she's not paying attention. Maddy starts feeling drawn to James, and he begins to feel the same way about her. Meanwhile, Paul is sitting at home feeling frustrated because the bruise from Maddy's punch left a mark on his face. His mother helps him apply ice to reduce the swelling. Later that day, Maddy and James are driving back home when a big storm hits, and all the roads are closed. James decides to take Maddy to the small hotel he's staying at so they can wait out the storm. Maddy calls Paul to tell him what happened, but his phone is off, so she leaves him a message. She then sits with James and learns that he doesn't really have a permanent home because his job requires him to travel a lot. They spend the evening dancing and singing together, really enjoying each other's company. The next day, Maddy is shocked to find that James's car has broken down. She's worried she might miss the rehearsal for the wedding ceremony. Luckily, one of Paul's friends shows up and helps them push the car to get it started. Maddy and James get soaked with water, but they finally get in the car and head back. James drives fast so Maddy won't be late. When they get home, everyone is surprised by how messy and wet her clothes are. She explains that the storm was the reason. The wedding rehearsal begins, and later the guests arrive for the party hosted by Paul's mom. Corey starts asking Maddy questions about the day she and Paul decided to get married, but Maddy can't remember anything, because for her, that day never really happened. Paul ends up answering all the questions, and no one notices anything odd except James, who keeps watching Maddy closely. After dinner, James tells Maddy she doesn't seem happy and guesses that she's about to make a life-changing decision, one she might regret if it's the wrong one. James says Paul told him that it was Maddy who proposed. Maddy says that's no big deal, but James points out that if Paul really loved her, he wouldn't have waited for her to be the one to propose. Maddy gets annoyed and tells James that he's just here to film the wedding and it's not his place to get involved in her personal life. Later, Maddy tells Paul that she's tired and going to bed to get some rest before the wedding. But it's clear she's upset about how she spoke to James. She opens the window for some fresh air and sees Paul talking to Emma. When Paul leaves, Emma stays behind crying. Maddy starts crying too, realizing that if she marries Paul, she'll be the reason Emma is heartbroken. The next day, Maddy apologizes to James for what she said the night before. She admits she's sad, even though marrying Paul is supposed to be her dream. James tells her that sadness is a sign she's making the wrong decision. At that moment, Paul sees them talking and becomes visibly upset. Maddy then goes to get dressed for the wedding. Emma walks in crying about the wedding, but Maddy tells her she saw her with Paul the night before. Emma breaks down and confesses that she loves Paul and feels that if they lived in a different time, they might have ended up together. Maddy listens and tells her she'll handle the situation. Soon, everyone is gathered, waiting for Maddy to walk down the aisle. But they're shocked when she walks in wearing regular clothes. She stands in front of everyone and says she thought she and Paul were in love, but she's realized that isn't true. She announces she's canceling the wedding so she and Paul don't end up unhappy or facing problems later on. Paul's mom is furious and says Maddy is humiliating her son in front of all their guests. Paul blames James, saying he saw him talking privately with Maddy. But Maddy fires back, saying she saw Paul with Emma the night before too. Paul gets angry and starts fighting with James. The whole wedding falls apart. James leaves the house, upset, and Maddy runs after him. She tells him she realized she loves him and wants to marry him. James says she's rushing things and walks away, leaving her behind. Maddy goes to the wishing chair, closes her eyes, and wishes for everything in her life to go back to normal. Then, she wakes up and finds Hazel entering the room, pretending to be the bride's best friend. Maddy smiles, realizing she's about to marry Paul. She heads to the wedding filled with happiness, but still looks around for James, and can't find him. She starts to leave to look for the inn where he's staying, but Paul stops her at the door and reminds her to pick a story for their new book. Maddy replies that she won't do that unless her name is next to his on the cover. It's clear Paul doesn't care much about her response, so Maddy smiles and walks away. He asks where she's going, and she says, "I'm going to write my new story." She heads to the hotel and finds out that James just left. She rushes out, searching for him, and finally finds him. When he sees her, he jokingly asks if she came to grab his suitcase again. Maddy laughs and says she came to ask him to photograph the beautiful landscapes in Ireland for her, and tells him she wants to choose one of them for the cover of her very first book. James agrees and seems so into her that he cancels his trip just to help her. And that's the end of the movie. If you enjoyed the film, give us a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.